You know that feeling when you first open your eyes in the morning and instead of feeling refreshed, you feel like you are physically moving underwater?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right. Your body is like a smartphone that was supposedly plugged into the wall all night long. But when you tap the screen, that battery icon is still flashing red.
Just hovering right at 1%.
Exactly. Hovering at 1%.
It is the absolute definition of a false charge. I mean, you go through the motions of sleeping, but the restorative metabolic processes seem to have completely bypassed you.
And when we feel that 1% battery, the immediate instinct is to reach for the nearest liquid jumper cable.
Which is usually a massive cup of coffee.
Right, just to drag ourselves out of that deep, murky water and function like a normal human being. But today, we have a stack of incredibly detailed source material in front of us. It is a clinical document that breaks down the hard science of longevity, human performance, and, well, morning vitality.
It is a fascinating read.
It really is. So the mission for this deep dive is to decode the exact biological reasons why you wake up feeling completely exhausted. And, more importantly, to walk away with a precise, science-backed toolkit to engineer your own energy.
A toolkit you can actually use tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for the longest time, I just assumed, waking up exhausted meant I simply didn't sleep long enough.
Right.
If I'm tired, the math says I must need more hours on the pillow.
Yeah, that is the default assumption for most people. However, the clinical terminology for that feeling of moving underwater, that severe cognitive and physical grogginess, is actually called sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia.
Right. And the diagnosis here usually points totally away from sleep duration. I mean, you could easily be in bed for 8, 9, or even 10 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, you go through all your REM and deep sleep cycles and still experience just crippling sleep inertia.
So wait, if it is not the total hours on the clock, what is biologically keeping us stuck at 1%?
Well, the culprit is your brain's internal master clock. Specifically, it is a tiny cluster of thousands of cells in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
The suprachiasmatic nucleus. I mean, that sounds like a propulsion drive on a deep space sci-fi ship.
It does sound a bit futuristic, yeah. But its function is heavily grounded in evolutionary biology. This nucleus regulates your circadian rhythm.
Okay.
So when you experience severe sleep inertia, your suprachiasmatic nucleus is entirely misaligned with your physical environment.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning your brain's internal timekeeper and the actual physical world around you are essentially existing in two completely different time zones.
Oh, wow.
You are waking up, but biologically, your brain is insisting it is still the middle of the night.
That makes a lot of sense. You are essentially jet-lagged in your own bedroom.
Precisely.
Without ever getting on an airplane. So to shake off that sleep inertia and tell the brain it is actually daytime, we need a very specific biological event to happen.
We do. We need a natural, highly robust spike in a specific hormone. Clinically, this is known as the Cortisol Awakening Response.
The cortisol spike. But usually when cortisol comes up, we are talking about stress.
Right. Yeah,
So
usually.
you think of being panicked, overwhelmed, or dealing with chronic anxiety. But here, this hormone is actually doing something highly productive.
Right, because context dictates function in biology. Chronic low-grade cortisol throughout the day is tied to stress and inflammation.
Bad news.
Exactly. But a sharp, acute spike in cortisol first thing in the morning is a biological necessity. It actually serves two major mechanical functions.
Okay, what is the first one?
First, it acts as a systemic chemical broom. It sweeps through the brain to clear out the remaining sleep-inducing chemicals, specifically a compound called adenosine.
Okay, I'm cracking that. But I want to pause on adenosine because this feels like a missing piece of the puzzle.
Sure.
We always hear adenosine referred to simply as a chemical that makes you sleepy. But where is it coming from in the first place? I mean, it doesn't just magically appear.
No, it doesn't, and that is a critical mechanism to understand. Adenosine isn't just a random sleep hormone. It is the literal metabolic exhaust of your cellular energy.
Metabolic exhaust.
Right. So your body's cellular energy factories, the mitochondria, they produce a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP.
Right. ATP is the actual currency of energy in the body. Like when a muscle contracts or a neuron fires, it is spending ATP.
Yes, and the process of spending it involves breaking off a phosphate molecule to release energy. So when your cells burn through ATP all day long, what is left over?
The adenosine molecule.
Exactly. It accumulates in the brain like exhaust fumes in a garage.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and the higher the adenosine concentration, the stronger the sleep pressure. So the cortisol awakening response is required to sweep out that leftover adenosine.
Got it. And the second function?
Its second function is to signal your mitochondria to rapidly ramp up fresh ATP production for the new day.
But see, this is where I have to push back on what we all do instinctively. Because when my cellular energy is low, I don't wait around for a natural hormone spike to signal my mitochondria.
You reach for the coffee.
I stumble to the kitchen and pour a giant mug of coffee. Relying on caffeine feels like, well, putting a piece of black tape over a car's check engine light.
That is a great way to put it.
Like, I am not actually fixing the engine or producing more ATP. I am just hiding the warning.
That analogy holds up perfectly under biological scrutiny. We really have to vigorously debunk the mainstream belief that coffee is a source of energy.
Because it is not.
It contains 0 calories, and it does not participate in the mitochondrial production of ATP at all. Caffeine is an adenosine antagonist. It works by exploiting receptor binding affinity.
Okay, let's zoom in on that mechanism. How does binding affinity actually work against our natural wake-up process?
So in your brain, you have specific receptors, primarily the A1 and A2A receptors, and they are designed to catch the adenosine molecules floating around. When adenosine binds to these receptors, it slows down neural activity. It basically tells your brain, hey, we have burned a lot of ATP, we are tired.
Right.
But caffeine happens to have a very similar molecular shape to adenosine. And it has a higher binding affinity, so it physically parks itself into those exact same receptors.
So the caffeine blocks the parking spots.
Exactly.
The brain's tired signal is blocked, and we suddenly feel awake and alert. But the underlying problem hasn't been solved at all. The actual adenosine, the metabolic exhaust, hasn't gone anywhere.
It is still accumulating in the synaptic space, just piling up behind the dam.
Wow.
The source material has a chilling way of phrasing this consequence, actually. By artificially blocking those receptors, caffeine merely borrows energy from tomorrow to pay for today.
Borrowing energy from tomorrow. Because that biological debt always comes due.
Inevitably. I mean, caffeine has a half-life. When it finally metabolizes and unbinds from those receptors hours later, all of that pent-up adenosine that has been patiently waiting, well, it floods the receptor sites all at once.
And there it is.
Yep, that is the biological guarantee of a severe afternoon crash. You haven't generated real cellular energy. You have just delayed the sensation of fatigue until your system is overwhelmed by it.
So if coffee is just trapping the adenosine and acting as a false cure, we need a way to actually metabolize it out of the brain.
Right.
Which requires an external trigger to kickstart that cortisol awakening response we talked about. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source material provides a brilliant metaphor to explain how our biology interprets environmental cues.
It translates a highly complex neurobiological process into something very tangible.
Yeah. Let's look at your brain's biological clock, that suprachiasmatic nucleus, as the master conductor of a grand, intricate symphony orchestra.
Okay.
And in this orchestra, your organs, your hormones, and your cellular mitochondria are all the individual musicians.
A vast ensemble that requires precise direction to play in time.
Exactly. Now, a conductor needs sheet music to know what song to instruct the orchestra to play. So picture what happens when you wake up in a pitch-black room, stay indoors, and the very first thing you do is grab your smartphone and stare at that glowing screen.
Which is what everyone does.
Right. In our symphony metaphor, that is like handing the master conductor smudged, blurry, almost unreadable sheet music.
What's fascinating here is the translation of that metaphor to our actual anatomy. The light entering your eyes is the sheet music for your biological clock.
Okay.
When you look at a smartphone or turn on a standard overhead bedroom lamp, you are exposing your eyes to maybe 300 to 500 lux of light energy.
Lux being the standard measurement of light intensity. And I imagine 300 lux is incredibly weak from a biological standpoint.
It is entirely insufficient. In your retina, you have a specialized group of neurons called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells.
That is quite the name.
It is a mouthful, yeah. But their sole job is to measure the brightness of your environment and send that data directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Got it.
A few hundred lux from an indoor bulb or a phone screen just does not cross the photon threshold required to activate those cells. The conductor is squinting at the blurry sheet music, unsure if it is daytime or still the middle of the night.
So the cellular musicians get confused.
Completely.
They're out of sync. Some mitochondria start producing ATP, some don't. The cortisol sweep is delayed. And the resulting music is just a sluggish, exhausted, disorganized mess.
That is the sleep inertia.
So how do we hand the conductor crisp, perfectly legible sheet music?
You step outside. The moment you step outside into natural morning sunlight, you are no longer dealing with a few hundred lux.
Right.
Even on a completely overcast, cloudy day, natural outdoor light provides 10,000 to 50,000 lux.
Wow.
And on a clear, sunny day, it can be upwards of 100,000 lux.
That is a staggering difference in photon density.
It really is. That massive influx of photons instantly activates those specialized cells in the retina. It is an undeniable, powerful signal to the conductor.
So it aligns the orchestra?
It aligns all the cellular musicians at once, establishing a firm biological rhythm. It immediately triggers the cortisol awakening response to clear out the adenosine, and your body begins creating an energetic symphony of wakefulness. Light, not liquid stimulants, is the ultimate biological trigger for human vitality.
Light is the actual switch. It causes the physiological reaction we have been trying to fake with coffee.
Exactly.
That means we aren't at the mercy of our espresso machines. But it also means we have to actively manage our environment. So how do you, listening right now, actually become the conductor of your own energy tomorrow morning?
Well, the clinical document translates this biology into 3 elite zero-cost behavioral protocols. This is a highly specific, actionable toolkit designed to optimize your morning physiology.
Let's break them down. Protocol number 1, the source calls this the Photon Shower Protocol.
The parameters for the photon shower are non-negotiable. Within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, you must step outside. You need to expose your eyes to natural sunlight for 10 to 15 minutes.
Let me clarify the mechanics here. When the source says expose your eyes, are we talking bare eyes? Like, wait, so no sunglasses?
No sunglasses. Sunglasses act as a filter. They drastically reduce the lux exposure and defeat the entire biological purpose.
Makes sense.
Now, you should never stare directly at the sun. Retinal damage is a real danger, but you need that ambient, unfiltered natural light hitting the eye. Standard prescription glasses or contact lenses are perfectly fine, though, as they don't filter out the necessary light intensity.
Okay, 10 to 15 minutes, bare eyes, or clear lenses. Why is that specific 30 to 60 minute window upon waking so critical? Like, if I wait until I get to the office at 9 a.m. and walk outside, does it do the same thing?
It doesn't. Because the sensitivity of those specialized cells in your retina shifts as the day progresses.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. When you first wake up, your biological clock is highly receptive to being anchored. Hitting the system with that massive photon shower early on not only triggers the cortisol peak to clear out adenosine, but it locks in your 24-hour internal timer.
Right.
It dictates exactly when your body will naturally release melatonin 14 to 16 hours later. If you delay that light exposure, your entire rhythm drifts and you will struggle to fall asleep that night.
You are setting the foundation for the entire day and night. Incredible. All right, protocol number 2. And I will warn you, if you love your morning routine, this requires a significant behavioral shift.
Okay.
Protocol 2 is the caffeine delay.
It asks for a level of discipline most people really aren't used to. But the metabolic payoff is undeniable. The protocol dictates waiting 90 to 120 minutes after waking up before consuming any caffeine.
90 to 120 minutes, I can hear the collective groan right now.
I know.
Why put ourselves through an hour and a half of caffeine withdrawal first thing in the morning? What is happening in that window that makes the wait worth it?
It comes back to giving the cortisol awakening response the runway it needs to do its job. We established that cortisol acts as a broom to sweep out the adenosine byproduct that makes you tired.
Right, exhaust.
That natural clearance process takes time. It needs that 90-minute window to effectively metabolize the adenosine out of your synaptic clefts.
So if you drink coffee 5 minutes after rolling out of bed, you introduce caffeine to the receptors before the cortisol has done the sweeping.
Precisely. You prematurely cap the receptors. The natural clearance process is blocked.
Wow.
The adenosine is just trapped in the brain, waiting for the caffeine to wear off. But by enduring the 90-minute delay, you allow your body to complete its natural biological cleanup.
Okay, I see.
So when you finally do have that cup of coffee, the caffeine isn't fighting against a backlog of sleepiness. It is purely enhancing an already awake, optimized system. It is the single most effective way to eliminate the severe afternoon crash.
Let the cortisol sweep the floor before you bring the furniture back in.
Exactly.
Okay, we secure the sunlight to trigger the cortisol. We delay the caffeine to let the cortisol work. That brings us to the third protocol in the toolkit. Protocol 3, the thermal wake-up call. And the instructions here are, well, intense.
They are a bit bracing.
The protocol states that at the very end of your normal morning shower, you must turn the water to its absolute coldest setting for exactly 30 to 60 seconds.
Deliberate, acute thermal exposure.
Now, I have to be skeptical here as a proxy for anyone listening. We see people doing 10 to 15-minute full ice bath submersions online all the time. Is a 30-second blast of cold shower water really doing anything biologically significant, or is it just a masochistic way to end a shower?
No, it is remarkably significant. And it has to do with the speed of the temperature change, not just the duration.
Okay.
When freezing water rapidly hits a large surface area of your skin, it triggers an intense survival reflex within your sympathetic nervous system.
A shock to the system.
Yes, your brain interprets this rapid thermal drop as an environmental stressor. It immediately dumps massive amounts of norepinephrine adrenaline into your bloodstream, alongside a sustained spike in dopamine.
So we are getting a severe rush of neurochemicals. But how does that translate into the cellular energy we were talking about earlier?
Well, the physical shock of the cold forces your body into a state of thermogenesis. It has to generate heat rapidly to protect your core organs.
Right.
To do this, it activates a specialized tissue called brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat is incredibly rich in mitochondria.
The cellular energy factories.
Yes, the cold shock forces those mitochondria into overdrive, upregulating their capacity to produce ATP without relying on a single drop of an external chemical stimulant.
That is amazing.
And over time, regular acute cold exposure actually increases your mitochondrial density. You are physically building more cellular engines to produce energy throughout the day.
So by combining the photon shower, the caffeine delay, and the thermal wake-up call, we are fundamentally restructuring how our body powers up.
Completely.
We stop the reliance on fake, borrowed energy and trigger real systemic biological vitality. So what does this all mean?
It means we must discard the notion that morning exhaustion is a permanent character trait.
Exactly. Your biology is not a fixed destiny. Just because you have woken up feeling like you were moving underwater for the last decade does not mean your physiological systems are broken.
Right.
You are operating a highly adaptable, wildly sensitive piece of biological machinery. You just haven't been providing it with the necessary inputs to function properly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is fundamentally an exercise in biological alignment.
How so?
For hundreds of thousands of years, human physiology evolved in strict accordance with the natural rhythms of the planet, the rising of the sun, the natural fluctuation of temperature.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you align your personal morning routines with those ancient planetary signals, you unlock a level of sustained vitality and cognitive focus that most people frankly believe they are incapable of reaching.
You stop fighting against the current of your own biology and start conducting it.
You realize you possess the biological leverage to engineer your own energy day by day.
It brings us full circle to that initial frustration. Waking up, feeling that internal battery flashing at 1%, desperately reaching for the coffee just to survive the morning.
The false charge.
Right. We've just spent this entire deep dive establishing how profoundly sensitive our biological symphony is to the Earth's natural light and temperature rhythms. We need the crisp sheet music of the sun to activate the suprachiasmatic nucleus, coordinate the cellular musicians, and generate real energy.
Exactly.
Which raises a massive, somewhat unsettling question to mull over as you analyze your own daily habits.
It naturally flips the entire paradigm of our modern lifestyle on its head.
It does. Because if our cells, our hormones, and our entire circadian rhythm are this responsive to bright morning light to wake us up, well, how heavily is our habit of artificially illuminating our homes late into the night actively sabotaging the very biological reset we need for tomorrow?
That is the big question.
If intense light is the ultimate signal to halt melatonin and spike cortisol, what kind of physiological damage are we doing to ourselves when we flood our retinas with the blue light of a tablet screen at midnight?
It is a question that forces us to critically evaluate the technological convenience of our evening routines.
Because you simply cannot expect to be a master conductor of your energy in the morning if you are constantly handing the orchestra blurry, confusing sheet music the night before.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science of morning vitality. The clinical source material has laid out the blueprint for human performance. Tomorrow morning, when that alarm goes off, remember that you are in control of the physiological inputs. Step into the light, give your body those 90 minutes before the coffee, and maybe brace yourself for those 30 seconds of cold water. Your biological symphony is waiting to play.